A man with no formal training in espionage, no ideological commitment to the Nazi cause, motivated purely by greed and ambition. For nearly a year, he photographed top-secret documents from the safe of the British ambassador in Ankara, selling them to the Germans for astronomical sums. He revealed Allied invasion plans, disclosed diplomatic strategies, and compromised some of the most sensitive operations of the war. Yet despite having what should have been war-winning intelligence literally handed to them on silver platters, the Germans ultimately failed to capitalize on Cicero's treasure trove of secrets. This is a tale of incredible access, staggering incompetence, and one of history's most bitter forms of justice. Welcome to the story of the Cicero Affair. Eliisa Bazna was born in 1904 in Pristina, then part of the Ottoman Empire, to an Albanian family. His early life was marked by the turbulence that characterized the Balkans in the early 20th century. He received limited formal education but possessed natural intelligence and remarkable cunning that would serve him throughout his extraordinary life. In his youth, Bazna worked various jobs across the region, including a stint as a firefighter and driver. His fluency in multiple languages, including Turkish, French, and English, made him valuable in the cosmopolitan circles of the former Ottoman territories. But it was his move into domestic service that would ultimately place him on the path to espionage infamy. By the late 1930s, Bazna had become a valet and servant to various diplomats and officials in Ankara, the capital of the Turkish Republic. Turkey, under the leadership of President İsmet İnönü, maintained a precarious neutrality during World War II, making it a hotbed of espionage activity. Both the Axis and Allied powers maintained significant intelligence operations in the country, each trying to sway Turkey to their side or at least prevent it from joining the enemy. Bazna's employers included several foreign diplomats, and through his work, he gained insight into the world of international intrigue. He was observant, discreet, and possessed a remarkable memory. More importantly, he was ambitious and harbored resentment toward the British, whom he felt had treated him as inferior during his years of service. This combination of qualities, opportunity, and motivation would soon create the perfect storm for one of history's greatest intelligence breaches. In 1943, Bazna secured what seemed like an ordinary position as a valet to Sir Hugh Knatchbull Hugessen, the British ambassador to Turkey. Sir Hugh was a career diplomat, the son of a baron, educated at Eton and Oxford, everything that represented the British establishment. He was also, unfortunately for British intelligence, somewhat careless with security protocols. The ambassador's residence in Ankara was a nerve center for British diplomatic and intelligence activities in the region. From this location, critical communications flowed between London, Moscow, and other Allied capitals. Plans for military operations, diplomatic negotiations with neutral countries, and intelligence assessments all passed through the embassy. And at the heart of this operation was the ambassador's personal safe, containing the most sensitive documents. Bazna, in his capacity as valet, had access to the ambassador's private quarters. He observed the ambassador's routines, noted his habits, and most crucially, discovered an opportunity. Sir Hugh would often leave documents in his bedroom safe, and Bazna noticed that he could determine the combination by watching carefully or even making wax impressions of the keys. The valet had also noticed something else. The Germans were willing to pay handsomely for information. Through contacts in Ankara's underworld and expatriate communities, Bazna knew that Nazi intelligence was desperately seeking sources within Allied missions. The question was whether he had the courage to take the extraordinary risk of photographing classified British documents. In October 1943, Bazna made his decision. He acquired a Leica camera and began his double life as a spy. His motivation was purely mercenary. He demanded payment in British pounds sterling, enormous sums that would make him wealthy beyond his dreams. He had no loyalty to Nazi Germany, no ideological opposition to the Allied cause. He simply saw an opportunity for wealth and took it with both hands. Bazna's first contact with German intelligence was carefully orchestrated. He approached Ludwig Moisisch, an Austrian working as an SD intelligence officer at the German embassy in Ankara. The initial meeting was tense. Moisisch was skeptical. Walk-in sources offering spectacular access were often too good to be true, potentially double agents sent by British intelligence to feed disinformation. But when Basna produced his first batch of photographs, Moisish realized he might have stumbled upon an intelligence goldmine. The documents were genuine, highly classified materials from the British ambassador's safe. They included telegrams between Churchill and Roosevelt, diplomatic communications with Turkey, and sensitive assessments of military strategy. Moisish gave Basna the codename Cicero, after the famous Roman orator, reflecting the eloquence with which these documents spoke to German intelligence needs. The Germans agreed to pay £20,000 for the initial batch of photographs, an enormous sum equivalent to hundreds of thousands of dollars today. Basna would be paid in British pounds, which he believed would be valuable after the war regardless of who won. The operation developed a routine. Basna would wait until the ambassador was asleep or away, access the safe using keys he had duplicated, photograph documents with his Leica camera, and replace everything exactly as he found it. He would then develop the film in his bathroom and deliver the photographs to Moisish, receiving stacks of British banknotes in return. The quality and quantity of intelligence was staggering. Cicero provided information on Allied conference preparations, including details about the upcoming Tehran conference where Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin would meet. He photographed documents revealing Allied strategy in the Mediterranean, plans for operations in the Balkans, and sensitive diplomatic negotiations with neutral countries. For German intelligence, it seemed like an answered prayer. Here was a source providing documentary evidence of Allied plans, straight from the ambassador's safe. The intelligence was timely, detailed, and came with actual photographs of original documents, making it difficult to dismiss as fabrication. Over the following months, Cicero's operation continued with remarkable success. He photographed hundreds of documents, creating what should have been an intelligence windfall for Nazi Germany. The material he provided included some of the most sensitive Allied secrets of the war. Among the revelations were details about Operation Overlord, the planned Allied invasion of France. While Cicero didn't provide the exact date or location, he did photograph documents discussing the general time frame and strategic considerations for opening a second front in Western Europe. This was intelligence that could have allowed Germany to better prepare its Atlantic wall defenses and potentially alter the outcome of D-Day. He also provided extensive information about Allied policy toward Turkey. The British and Americans were courting Turkey, trying to bring the neutral country into the war on the Allied side or at least secure basing rights and passage through Turkish territory. Cicero's documents revealed the negotiating positions, concessions the Allies were willing to make, and their assessment of Turkish intentions. The spy photograph communications about Allied operations in Italy, the ongoing campaign in the Mediterranean, and planning for operations in the Aegean. He provided intelligence on British assessments of Soviet intentions and the delicate three-way relationship between London, Washington, and Moscow. He even captured documents related to British intelligence operations in the Balkans, potentially compromising resistance movements and Allied agents. Basna was becoming fabulously wealthy. By early 1944, he had accumulated £300,000, an absolutely staggering sum. He lived modestly to avoid suspicion but dreamed of the luxurious retirement this fortune would provide after the war. He purchased property through intermediaries and made plans for his future as a wealthy gentleman. The operation seemed perfect. Basna was careful, methodical, and never greedy enough to take unnecessary risks. Sir Hugh Knatchbull Hugesson remained completely oblivious to the fact that his trusted valet was photographing his most secret documents nightly. British security, while aware of German intelligence activities in Ankara, had no indication that their own embassy had been so thoroughly compromised. Here is where the Cicero story takes its most ironic turn. Despite having access to genuine high-quality intelligence from the heart of British diplomatic operations, the Germans largely failed to act on it. This failure stemmed from several factors that reveal much about the dysfunction within Nazi Germany's intelligence apparatus and leadership. First, there was the problem of believing the intelligence was too good to be true. Various elements within German intelligence, particularly the Abwehr under Admiral Wilhelm Canaris and elements of the Foreign Ministry, suspected that Cicero was a British plant. They theorized that the British had deliberately allowed Basna access to the safe to feed carefully crafted disinformation to the Germans. This paranoia wasn't entirely unfounded. The British had successfully run numerous deception operations throughout the war, and the Germans had been burned by fake intelligence before. The very perfection of Cicero's access raised red flags. How could a mere valet have such complete access to the most sensitive documents? Why hadn't British security detected him? Rivalries within the Nazi intelligence and military establishment also played a role. The SD, the Abwehr, the Foreign Ministry, and various military intelligence branches all competed for Hitler's favor. Each viewed the other's intelligence coups with suspicion, and there was reluctance to act on intelligence that might give a rival organization credit for success. More fundamentally, there was Hitler himself. The Führer had developed what can only be described as an intuitive approach to intelligence assessment. He trusted his instincts over detailed analysis and often dismissed intelligence that contradicted his worldview or strategic preconceptions. Some Cicero material that reached Hitler was simply ignored because it didn't align with what he wanted to believe about Allied intentions. The result was that much of Cicero's intelligence was filed away, analyzed to death, or simply disbelieved. The warnings about Allied invasion plans were not acted upon with the urgency they deserved. The diplomatic intelligence about Turkey was noted but didn't significantly alter German policy. Opportunities to disrupt Allied operations or strengthen German defenses were squandered because the intelligence was doubted or bureaucratically mishandled. By early 1944, Cicero's operation was living on borrowed time, though Basna didn't know it yet. Several developments were converging that would ultimately expose the operation and bring it to an end. First, British and American intelligence had begun to suspect a leak in Ankara. While they didn't immediately identify Basna, they noticed that German intelligence seemed unusually well informed about Allied diplomatic activities involving Turkey. Counterintelligence officers in both MI6 and the American OSS began investigating possible security breaches. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The Americans had broken German diplomatic codes, including some of the communications between the German embassy in Ankara and Berlin. These intercepts revealed that the Germans had a highly placed source within the British embassy, though they didn't initially identify who it was. Additionally, there were operational security mistakes. Basna had become slightly less careful as his confidence grew. There were small inconsistencies, documents not returned to exactly the right position, minor disturbances that eventually attracted attention. Sir Hugh's secretaries began to notice slight irregularities, though they initially attributed these to the ambassador's own handling of materials. The investigation focused initially on embassy staff with direct access to classified materials. Diplomats, military attaches, secretaries. The idea that the ambassador's valet could be responsible seemed almost absurd. Basna had been carefully vetted, had no apparent political motivations, and had served in diplomatic households for years without incident. However, as other suspects were eliminated and the investigation intensified, attention finally turned to the support staff, including Basna. Counterintelligence officers began surveillance of embassy employees, watching for suspicious behavior, unexpected wealth, or unusual contacts. In April 1944, the net began to close. Basna sensed the changed atmosphere in the embassy and realized that his operation was becoming increasingly dangerous. He had accumulated an enormous fortune in British pounds and decided it was time to end his espionage career before he was caught. In April 1944, Basna abruptly resigned from his position at the British Embassy, claiming family reasons. This sudden departure, combined with the ongoing investigation, quickly made him the prime suspect. But by the time British intelligence fully confirmed his identity as Cicero, he had disappeared into the anonymous crowds of Ankara. The British were mortified by the security breach. An internal investigation revealed the extent of the compromise, and it was devastating. Dozens, possibly hundreds of highly classified documents had been photographed. The breadth of the intelligence leak was shocking, and heads would roll in the diplomatic and security services. Sir Hugh Knatchbull Hugesson was quietly recalled to London. While he wasn't held criminally responsible, his career effectively ended. The ambassador who had allowed his valet to photograph secrets from his bedroom safe became a cautionary tale in diplomatic security protocols. The affair was kept secret for years to avoid public embarrassment and to prevent other intelligence services from understanding the full extent of the compromise. For Basna, however, the story was far from over, and the final chapter would deliver a form of justice more fitting than any prison sentence. He had escaped arrest, had his fortune in British pounds, and planned to live out his days in luxury. He purchased a villa, made investments, and prepared to enjoy the fruits of his espionage. But there was a problem. A catastrophic problem. The British pounds he had been paid, pound 300,000 worth, were counterfeit. The German intelligence service had been printing fake British currency as part of Operation Bernhard, a scheme to destabilize the British economy by flooding it with forged pounds. The bills were high-quality forgeries, produced by prisoners in concentration camps, and were nearly indistinguishable from genuine currency. The Germans had decided to pay their expensive spy with their counterfeit money rather than genuine funds. When Basna tried to spend or exchange his fortune, he discovered the truth. The banks rejected the notes as forgeries. His entire payment, every pound he had risked his life for, was worthless. The man who had sold some of the war's most valuable secrets had been paid in fake money by the very people he was helping. The final years of Eliezer Basna's life were marked by poverty and bitterness. After the war, he attempted to sue the West German government for payment of genuine currency, arguing that he had provided valuable services to Germany and had been fraudulently compensated. His claims were, unsurprisingly, rejected. He worked various menial jobs, a far cry from the life of luxury he had envisioned. In 1962, he published a memoir titled I Was Cicero, which was later adapted into a film called 5 Fingers, starring James Mason. He made some money from these adaptations, but nothing approaching the fortune he had believed he'd earned during the war. Basna died in Munich in 1970, neither wealthy nor celebrated, his story serving as a cautionary tale about greed, betrayal, and the fickleness of fortune. The man who had achieved one of the greatest intelligence coups of World War II died, having gained nothing from his efforts. The Cicero Affair raises profound questions about the nature of intelligence work and the use of information in warfare. Here was a case where one side obtained genuine, high-quality strategic intelligence about their enemy's plans and capabilities. Yet they failed to capitalize on it due to bureaucratic dysfunction, internal rivalries, paranoia, and leadership failures. How different might the war have been if the Germans had trusted and acted upon Cicero's intelligence? Could they have better prepared for D-Day? Might they have disrupted Allied diplomatic efforts more effectively? These questions remain subjects of historical debate, but most experts agree that the Germans' failure to use Cicero's intelligence represents one of the great missed opportunities in the history of espionage. The Cicero Affair offers several important lessons that remain relevant to intelligence and security services today. First, it demonstrates the critical importance of physical security and personnel vetting. Sir Hugh Knatchbull Hugesson's casual approach to document security created the opportunity for Basna's espionage. Modern diplomatic and military organizations have learned from this case, implementing strict protocols for handling classified materials and limiting access even within secure facilities. Second, the case illustrates the dangers of intelligence organizational dysfunction. The Nazi intelligence community's inability to effectively use genuine, high-quality intelligence because of internal rivalries and bureaucratic infighting shows how organizational culture can negate even the best intelligence collection. Modern intelligence communities work hard to ensure that collection and analysis are properly integrated and that information can flow to decision-makers without being trapped in bureaucratic bottlenecks. Third, Basna's story reminds us that spies are often motivated by mundane rather than ideological factors. He wasn't a true believer in Nazi ideology. He was simply greedy. Intelligence services must be alert to insider threats driven by financial problems, personal resentment, or simple greed, not just ideological conversion. Finally, the cosmic justice of Basna being paid in counterfeit currency serves as a reminder that betrayal often carries its own punishment. He betrayed his employer's trust, compromised his country's allies, and potentially extended the war by aiding Nazi Germany. That he ended up with nothing but worthless paper has a certain poetic symmetry that fiction writers would hesitate to invent for fear of seeming implausible. The Cicero Affair remains one of the most fascinating episodes in the history of espionage. It combined elements that seem drawn from a spy thriller: a trusted servant with secret access, enormous stakes, vast sums of money, and ultimately, a twist ending that denied the villain his reward. Eliezer Basna achieved something extraordinary. With no formal training, no sophisticated equipment beyond a camera, and no ideological motivation, he penetrated one of the most sensitive Allied installations and extracted hundreds of classified documents. His success revealed serious weaknesses in British security procedures and demonstrated the vulnerability of even well-protected organizations to insider threats. Yet his success came to nothing. The Germans doubted the intelligence they received, their internal dysfunctions prevented effective use of the material, and Basna himself was cheated out of his payment. In the end, the secrets he stole may have done less damage than the security reforms his exposure prompted. The story of Cicero stands as a reminder that in the shadowy world of espionage, success is measured not in intelligence collected but in how that intelligence is used. It also reminds us that betrayal, even when it seems to succeed spectacularly, often carries within it the seeds of its own punishment. Basna risked everything for wealth and gained nothing but a place in history as the spy who was paid in counterfeit currency for selling genuine secrets. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of World War II's most remarkable espionage cases, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what other historical intelligence operations you'd like us to explore.